Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to NBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up? Really like that. You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
Just goofing around.
So many activities.
So many activities. So much room for activities. Welcome into tonight's show. It is Thursday night here on NBR, our national hour. Nothing But Rants, the show where we find topics that we're oddly passionate about and we pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. When you give opinions, for a living, I think that's what I do. I think we can classify what I do right now as giving opinions for a living. When you give opinions for a living, you got to understand something about the internet. Every time you get introduced to a new audience, particularly for me, the way that I do things, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of national analysts are kind of guys that just say a lot of good things about everybody. They just kind of give the proper stance and the good stance about everybody, and they always do that. And there might be some criticisms in there every once in a while, but they will never stand on a table and call somebody a cheater if they feel like someone has cheated, which is the way that I feel about this Michigan situation. I feel like they've gone way outside the means of standard sign stealing, and they've gone to deviant behavior, and they've gone about it in a way and such that I believe it is a form of cheating. That is the way I've gone about this stance. That's the way I've gone about this, topic and storyline. And with that, okay, when you speak so negatively or perceptually negatively about a fan base, you're going to get the heat. Okay, understand that. You're going to get flamed up. People are going to come after you in your mentions. So I learn a lot about fan bases when I get introduced to them in these metrics and in these fashions, okay? And I've had not all of them, I've had a lot of them at this point, right? As a Georgia beat reporter, I've covered Ohio State football games and I've been introduced to that fan base. I've covered Clemson football games and I've been introduced to that fan base. I've covered pretty much every SEC team in the conference and I've gotten introduced to those fan bases. Every single time one of these things happens, I learn exactly what and kind of who the negative, the really vitriol people are in those fan bases. So, Michigan fans, welcome to the mentions, and I've learned a lot about you through this process. First of all, someone today called me the Down syndrome Pat McAfee, and I don't know if we can use Down syndrome jokes anymore, but honestly, as the culprit and the victim, one of two victims, obviously the Down syndrome community, but one of the two victims in this joke that I suffered today, I thought it was kind of funny.
That's good.
It was clever, but again, in 2023, don't know if we can make Down syndrome jokes. Probably shouldn't go with Down syndrome jokes. But again, hey, if you told me I was a knockoff brand of Pat McAfee, I would tell you that you kind of get the show. You kind of understand what we're shooting for here, and we appreciate your approval there. Talked about it in the NBR hour. People definitely think this is my mom's basement.
That's kind of funny, too.
What is it? Is it because I look like I'm 18 and I can't grow facial hair? But someone called me an old white guy today on social media. So what is it about me? People just can't read it?
Interesting that people think that me and Christian are just pulling up to your mom's house and kicking it with you. Like we're still 12-year-olds having a sleepover every night.
Absolutely. But this is indeed my house.
Yeah, to be fair, though, like how many people set up like a full-blown studio in their basement?
I think we're one of one.
This does he's just doing this in his mom's basement.
Yeah, it does have no way that guy has that going on type vibes. Which, again, the exact notion of remember when you guys sat in here and there was an unfinished basement? What I told you was, I want people to turn this on and go, God damn, who bought Brooks out? Mm-hmm. Who gave Brooks all that money to invest? By the way, it was expensive. This rebuild was expensive. But if you allocate resources properly, if you work your ass off, this stuff is not that hard. Okay, it's not that hard to establish a high quality TV-like network studio vibe, okay, in your mom's basement. You can get it done. Now, whether or not she'll allow you.
That should be the studio name.
Huh?
That should be the studio
Brooks's
name.
mom's basement?
Just mom's basement.
Mom's basement? I don't know. I don't necessarily love it because I spent a lot of time and effort in this place building this. A lot of time and effort building this place. So yeah, no, it is not my mom's basement. It is indeed my basement. Also notice that when you give football opinions for a living, if people don't like it, the first thing they will do is clearly this guy's never played. And then when they do that with me, it quickly diverts to clearly this guy didn't play high-level football, which is a funny little pivot that happens every single time someone runs into this mistake. Because one thing I will give about this audience, and particularly my followers on Twitter, y'all be going to war. Y'all be going to war. When the homie's getting attacked, y'all show up in spades, and I appreciate that. Don't do it with pitchforks and knives. Do it with wit. Like telling somebody to Google you, bro. That's the way we like to do it around here. We don't like to be vitriol. Don't like to be angry. Just kind of like to. I'm here for these jokes, man. I'm here to have fun. Except for when you cheat football, and then I get really, 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 really upset because the sanctity of the sport means something to me. Oh, somebody called me a pearl clutcher in the Michigan fan base today. Yeah, I clutch pearls. I do. I worry about this game. I worry about the sanctity of the sport because I love the sport. Sue me. All right, get mad at me. It's unfortunate that it is that way. But we learned something about every single fan base every single time I go, quote unquote, viral. I had a dude today put in a fake arrest and try to paint me as a sexual offender. Yeah, wild. Never had that. I get a lot. Apparently, I've lost weight because I didn't see any, this dude is fat comments, which is Florida's pull. Florida fan base, which granted, when I was, really cracking on Dan Mullen and the Jays, I was walking around at like 285, 290. Was drinking pretty heavily. I had real swelling in my face. I was a fat dude. So I can understand why that was the first trigger to pull. Never have I gotten Down syndrome. So that was a new one today.
Contract it.
No, Theo Vaughn said you do. He's the first person to beat it.
He did say that.
He's the first person to beat Down syndrome.
He said, "Never have I gotten Down syndrome."
And not as a slight that someone thought.
Okay, that's what you meant by it. I thought you meant like I've never had it.
Missing one. But anyways, I learned a lot about the Michigan fan base. This being right here, there's this term Michigan men.
Yeah.
Okay, and they definitely have this holier than thou feeling about them. This fan base does, that they are the supremacy of the sport, that they are this alpha male creation, that just because they like Michigan football, that they are some kind of superior to everybody else. They're a Michigan man. And I think that's why they've been so attacking in the mentions, because this has got to hurt. This has got to hurt. This has got to hurt to walk around every day thinking that you're the supremacy of this sport, that you are holier than everybody else, that you are a Michigan man, that you hold yourself to different standards, that you're the Ivy League of the Midwest. And then all of a sudden, your football team finally gets over the hump of your biggest rival, who you probably hate more than any other rivalry in the sport. Michigan and Ohio State hate each other more than any other rivalry that I've covered, because there is no obvious and known big brother in that rivalry. All right, there isn't. They're normally pretty even. But recently, y'all been bad. Jim Harbaugh, 0 for 5, maybe 0 for 6 against Ohio State. All right, and then all of a sudden he's 2-0 against Ohio State. And you as a fan base, Michigan men-filled fan base, y'all think, oh, we got it figured out. And then all of a sudden y'all find out that y'all been cheating the game and y'all been getting by, doing a little bit something that you ain't supposed to be doing. And now all of a sudden you're in everybody's comments and mentions going, no. I promise, it's not a big deal. Okay, you still got to line up and play ball. I'm sorry. It's really unfortunate for you. It really is. And that's what I opened with the other night. I feel bad for you. I feel bad for you Michigan men that are out here in the comment sections going to war for a coach who does not love you. Your coach does not love you. I know he graduated from there. I know he's a Michigan man himself, but he's going to leave that program worse than he found it, with some potential, whether they're grade 2 or grade 3 sanctions. Nonetheless, the rest of the college football world has a stain on Michigan if the rest of this stuff continues to be reported truthfully, and the NCAA investigation comes out to find what we all believe to be true based off the reporting, that you did cheat. And once that happens, everybody's going to cover your name and bring your name because of Jim Harbaugh and whatever's happened lately with these names. Houston Astros. That sucks. I'm sorry that sucks for you. All right, but it doesn't mean you got to get in everybody's mentions and act like you've been lately, because you're supposed to be Michigan men.
Michigan's a classic case of the dude that keeps getting back with the toxic ex.
Ooh,
The toxic
like
ex keeps drawing you back in, like, oh, I've changed, like it's okay, like yeah, don't pay attention to the cheating scandal that happened last time. I will love you this time. They just need some gas money and someone to pay for their dinner, and then it winds up happening again. But they still refuse to see that person for the person that they are.
Hey, Michigan fans, if you're hate watching, keep sticking around because we got RJ, Richard Johnson at RJ_CFB coming up right now. He's going to be talking about a tremendous reporting on this Connor Stallions that he did in the mothership, sportsillustrated.com yesterday. This has also been referred to as the Michigan Manifesto document. This is the article that basically gave us a bunch of feedback on what it is and who it is that Connor Stallions is.
Cool. All right, cool.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, he is Richard Johnson. He's the co-host of the Split Zone Duo podcast, and he's an excellent writer for SportsIllustrated.com. He is Richard Johnson. You can find him on Twitter at RJ_CFB. And I have to say this before the show. I was telling you before we get in, or before we started recording, you and Spencer Hall on SEC Network did some of the best television that network has produced, in my humble opinion. I think it's not only was it fun television, but it was unique television. It was something that we didn't often see very much on that network. So first of all, thank you for coming on, Richard. But I appreciate your work, man, for real.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we had a great time doing the show for the 3 seasons that we did it, and the folks at the SEC Network were all class, helping us out and giving us a platform to have a lot of fun. So it was a great time.
100%. But I appreciate you for being here today. And obviously, you're here to talk about this Michigan article and some of the reporting that you've done on this. If you haven't read Richard's piece, please go read it today. It's titled, Michigan's Connor Stallions texted that he, quote, stole opponent signals from TV and had a vision for the Wolverines. First of all, kudos, Richard, for running down text messages between a Power 5 student and this Connor Stallions fella. And as per usual, with something like this, with deviant behavior, as we've been calling it on this network, people that are acting this way almost always are quick to brag about it, and Connor Stallions was no different, was he not?
Yeah, this was not a text message exchange with a close friend or a longtime friend or a family. Like, this was effectively a cold text, communication between him and this, at the time, Power 5 college student that I was speaking to. Yeah, it's wild. And I've been telling people this, like, this is not a master criminal. It's not a crime. No. This is not a master, you know what I mean? Personally, I don't believe that there are master criminals, because if you're a real mastermind, you don't get caught. And that's the ththing here. My former colleague at Sports Illustrated, now at Yahoo, Ross Dellinger, among others, reported that the guy was buying the tickets on secondary marketplaces with his own credit card. Again, this is not Hannibal Lecter here, man. This is just a guy.
You've been around the college football world for a while. I'm sure you're aware of SEC Shorts, right?
Yes, yeah.
SEC Shorts is normally this, like, they make, they take jokes and kind of expound upon them, and they really stretch the jokes. This one was verbatim the reporting. They just went in there and they were like, it was verbatim the reporting, and it was hysterical, and it was no jokes. It was just literally what happened.
I haven't seen that yet. I'm gonna check that out. They're really funny.
Yeah, you need to go watch it. I mean, honestly, in this reporting, like I said, it was right off the jump in the very beginning of the article. He mentions how close he is to Jay Harbaugh, the son of Jim Harbaugh, as well as Chris Partridge, the running backs coach and assistant the linebackers coach now. It was very evident through his, and you guys did go through the diligent reporting of actually proving that it was indeed Connor Stallions' phone number. He was pretty adamant about how close he was with this coaching staff. Was he not, Richard?
Yeah, and that's another, it's one of those things that, and in thinking about it and talking about it with some people, it sort of, and I didn't write this to pass judgment on any of this, or even if Jim Harbaugh was guilty on it. I don't know yet. This story was written to try to paint the picture of this guy and his motivations for doing this, orchestrating this scheme that it is apparent that he did. But if you're a Michigan person, this does sort of help you. I can see how this helps you say he was a lone wolf or acting on his own or whatever. He's got a lot of go for itness to him, obviously.
Dude.
He's got a lot of commitment, obviously, to Michigan. I mean, like, I spoke to some sources at the Naval Academy who were like, look, when he was at the Naval Academy, which he went to, by the way, he turned down admission to the University of Michigan, where his parents went, and obviously a big fan of, to go to the Naval Academy because he thought it would help him in the future coaching, because a lot of famous coaches from Bo Schembechler, Belichick, Woody Hayes, you name it, have ties to the Naval Academy. So he went to the military, went to the Naval Academy, went to the Marines, and it's just like you can tell. And I spoke to some people at the Naval Academy that when he was at the Naval Academy, it was not at all rare for him to just like go to Michigan games over the weekend when he was on leave, or when Navy wasn't in town in Annapolis. Like it's pretty wild stuff.
No, like in some of this reporting, and I want to read some of this to the audience, because again, if you haven't read this article, you need to. But some of this, it almost sounds like, I don't want to use this word, but I mean, he called it a manifesto. He sounds radicalized in some of this talking, like the way he talks about his future and the way he talks about how it almost sounds like he seems like he's been spoken to by the football gods in some of this reporting, in some of this right here, right? Stallions, now 28, revealed that he was a part of a small group of people, two of who he said were at lower level positions at different college football coaching staffs, who were putting their heads together on a long-term plan to run the Michigan football program. Stallions claimed that the Google document, between 550 and 600 pages long, that he managed daily, containing a blueprint for the Wolverines' future. He referred to the document as a movement more than a plan, dubbing it a Michigan manifesto. Any idea that you could have, he wrote, there's a place where it belongs in the document. It's super organized. He goes on, Richard, in your reporting to say, or in these text messages, to say that he's got groups of guys, like hidden sergeant cells in all these other different college football programs, that are going to come together, and 15 years from now, they're going to dominate the Ohio State. Like this dude sounds like college football, like fandom. This dude sounds radicalized, fanatical, does he not?
I think it's one of those things where you have the combined obvious passion and zeal for Michigan, your program, whatever it is. You have a combined passionate zeal for breaking into coaching, breaking into the college football industry in any way you can. You got a foothold at your favorite university, not his alma mater, but at his favorite team. And there's obviously some like level of intelligence in a very specific, specialized thing. Like even people at the Naval Academy, they were like, we were not terribly surprised that he could pull something off like this as far as orchestrating the sign stealing and yada, yada, yada. They were not terribly surprised. Exactly. Like, it's one of those things where, hey, you're really intelligent and really specialized in this one thing, one thing. And then everything else is a common sense, may not be so common situation. But it's just interesting how, hey, he certainly applied himself to a very certain thing, and maybe he took it too far. And I was talking to somebody yesterday who was kind of theorizing, like, maybe he was somebody who had so much passion, so much zeal, and the Michigan coaching staff or staffers or recruiting people or whoever in the building were like, hey, why don't you just do this? Like, do this thing to kind of, I don't know, get him out of the building or give him something to do, where I have no idea.
I mean, obviously it's been well reported and it's well talked about. And I think the starting point with all this is like, sign stealing isn't illegal. Like, we all know that. We're all well versed in that. But the depths at which the reporting has come out that they've gone through, or that this individual, I should say, has reportedly gone through to steal these signs, it's unlike anything that you've probably covered or reported upon, is it not?
No, yeah, I wasn't around for Spygate in 2007. I imagine this is about as close as it gets with the Patriots. The Red Sox Apple Watch thing and the Astros banging on the trash can. Like, those were all in-game things. And like you said, I have no problem with sign stealing, and I don't think anybody does, honestly, in college football. Like, everybody understands that, like, you try to swipe signs, just like in baseball, you try to swipe signs. It just is what
I was about to say, if
But-
you've read any of the reporting for some of these defensive coaches, they almost prefer the methods of stealing the signs. They're like, this is great. We enjoy it.
And that's why when people ask me, why isn't there coach to quarterback or coach to defensive player helmet communication, some of that is because coaches understand that there is value in being able to swipe the signs of the opponent. Like I've talked to some coaches and talked to some former players in the last few days as this story has mushroomed, and they've sort of told me, they're like, yeah, man, like I had one former quarterback send me a box score. He was like, hey, I played in this game. I was a backup in this game, and I was told to swipe the signs from the opponent, and he sends me a box score, and he goes, try to find when I got the signs. And the box score is like 11 plays, 1 drive, 8 plays, 1 drive, 9 plays, 1 drive, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. It's like, oh, well, hey, like, when did you get the signs of the opponent?
And look, what you just described, Richard, that's in-game scouting. We are here during this ball game. I'm watching you. You're dumb enough to not change your signals midway through the quarter. We're going to take them. All right, that's fine. That is fine. What is being reported now with Michigan, they had plans to scout Ohio State 8 times this year, Richard.
Right.
That is cheating. That is just downright cheating. I don't think there's any bones about that. And I think the obvious behind the channels, behind the scenes deviant behavior was noticeable. Hey, I think we kind of blazed over this manifesto thing a little bit too quickly while I have you on here. This Michigan manifesto, did you have any opportunities to look at it? Do you know anything that's in it? What was this crazy person talking about in this 600-word document?
Brother, if I had it, that story would have been a 12-part series. I'll tell you that right now. I do not have it. I have heard, though, in the last 24 hours or so since we published the story, that it was known about, at least to some, in the Michigan football building, the existence of it. So it exists. I don't have it. I'd love to get it. Richard.johnson@si.com. If you happen to have it, is my email address, by all means. But yeah, I'd love to see it if you got it, but I do not have it currently.
That was not the craziest thing I read in the article. The craziest thing I read in the article was that he walked into the Naval Academy's records department and got 500 test scores from Naval Academy football players by basically just saying, the coach sent me here, and then tried to use that data to create or confirm a theory that he had that basically stated, if your SAT scores are good, but your GPA is bad, you are lazy. If your GPA score is high, but your ACT scores and standardized test scores are low, you're a hard worker, therefore will translate more into football. Now, I've got to tell you, Richard, okay, I've got to be honest, and with the audience as well, I had a really, really bad GPA, but an extremely high ACT score, and
look
I
at you
was
now.
extremely lazy.
I
checked out. He's not crazy.
That was like, and look, like I went, to be honest with you, the Naval Academy anecdote is why I was like, all right, this is, when I spoke to this source on Friday, which is last Friday, which is when I actually learned of the existence of all this kind of stuff. I got a text from this person as the Stallion story was breaking and his name became public. I got a text from this person and was like, hey, like this guy's, wild. Like you gotta, and I called him and I was like, what are you talking about? Da, 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 da. And he said, oh, well, I had a conversation with him like 2 years ago. And I was like, you what? He was like, yeah, I had a conversation with him like 2 years ago. He was telling me about all these theories and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, screen record the conversation that you had with this guy and shoot it to me. And so I'm reading through this conversation, and look, the manifesto stuff is wild, but I don't think on its own, I would have written about it. But then I got to the Naval Academy stuff, and I was like, I don't want to act like this is like a national security breach thing, but like, if the guy like in some way, shape, or form is publicly admitting to somebody he doesn't know that he swiped this data from the Naval Academy, like there's some newsworthiness to this. So I got with the Naval Academy, and not just, the Navy football program. I mean, this was capital N, capital A Naval Academy. This went up through to try to see, like, did this, and they neither confirmed or denied that it happened, but they did give me a statement, and the statement is in the story, and the statement is pretty clear. Like, if he did this is minorly an actual potentially crime. Like it, and they told him to delete the data the next day, and I am pretty sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that he did not delete it.
He just name dropped the coach in text messages. That's what he said. The guy was like, "How'd you do that?" And he was like, "Oh, I just told him. Coach Ken told me to come in there." What? Absolutely absurd. Hey, he is Richard Johnson. Again, the article is titled "Michigan's Connor Stalions texted that he stole opponent signals from TV and had a vision for the Wolverines." Richard, I appreciate you for joining us. You can find him on Twitter at RJ_CFB. Richard, thanks, man.
Absolutely.
Hey, no doubt. That is Richard Johnson. If you haven't, again, you need to go read that article. It's filled with a lot of interesting details about Connor Stalions and just his willingness to brag about his operation. So for those of you who might have found this story and be like, oh, maybe there's a potential that the rest of the coaching staff wasn't made aware of this, and maybe this agent was acting rogue. Connor Stalion, this rogue agent, was pretty quick to admit to a total stranger, essentially is the way RJ worded it to us, how close he indeed was with not only offensive coordinators, but Jim Harbaugh's son, Jay Harbaugh, as well. So if you haven't already, read that article today. But I just want to kind of wrap a bow on this right quick. In conclusion, Michigan, under the direction of Jim Harbaugh, currently has the following: an investigation into the purchases of hamburgers for recruits and the subsequent lying about it under investigation of the NCAA. Their former offensive coordinator, Matt Weiss, is currently under FBI investigation for his involvement in computer crimes related to Michigan football right now as well. And number three, the story that has obviously captivated the college football world this week. A recruiting staffer has been accused of the biggest cheating scandal in recent memory, basically going out and advanced scouting football teams, upwards of 40 opponents on the schedule to illegally observe this year. And they're undefeated and the number 2 ranked football team in the country. Jim Harbaugh in a little bit of hot water. But enough of Michigan. We got some ACC football talk to do right now with our guy, TJ Pittinger. He is a legend, all right? And he is a legend for this instance alone. He is the first one to treat us like we ought to be treated around here, boys, a national show, okay? And he did it in a way that I didn't necessarily love. All right, he took our prediction, or you guys' prediction, of Duke, I believe it was, beating Florida State, or who was it?
I think it was his prediction.
It was LSU over Florida State, I
Okay,
believe.
your prediction of LSU over Florida State, and put it on his Loud Wrongs segment over there on YouTube, which I think was a banger of an episode over there on his YouTube channel that you guys should subscribe to if you're looking for any Florida State information. He is TJ Pittinger. TJ, appreciate you for joining us tonight, brother.
Man, I forgot about that. It feels like the season's, you get in the grind of the weeks and you're like, oh yeah, we played LSU this year. But yeah, that one did really well. So I appreciate you guys for taking them. So yeah, it worked out well for us.
Yeah, anytime. We'll be punching bags. You know what? I do want to give you shit on this because we were one of the few networks, at least me, national analysts, to come out and say, hey, Florida State making the college football playoff this year. That was my take in August. Yeah. I don't see no clips from TJ Pittinger out here going loud right on Brooks.
Yeah, we got to make it first. Hey,
you got to make it first. No, but I appreciate you for joining us tonight. We want to talk a little ACC with you, but I first want to play a little game with you. Now, I didn't prepare you for this, TJ, but you've been fighting the good fight on social media all year long defending them Seminoles. So I'm going to ask you, here's how we're going to do this. we are going to play the side of Florida State is fraudulent, okay? Because every national talking head show that's outside of Danny Cannell is out here saying Florida State's a bunch of frauds. So we're going to play that role today. I want you to fight the good fight and tell us why we're wrong. First things first, we're going to slap you right over the head with the stats. My boy Jay Will, tell us, give it to us. You gave it to us a couple weeks ago. Just how mediocre is Florida State across the board right now?
So I will go ahead and say this. The ones that I read like 2 weeks ago, there has been some dramatic changes in those where FSU has improved. But these are the questions that I have statistically for Florida State, and it stems off of the offenses that they played and the defenses that they played. Starting with the defenses that they played, LSU's 80th, Southern Miss is 132nd, Boston College is 105th, Clemson is 39th, Virginia Tech 65th, Syracuse 46th, Duke 5th. Then going on to the offensive front.
How many Power 5 football teams are there? There's 133 Division I teams?
Something around
133, and they played somebody that was 132 in defense.
Yeah, I think they were second to last.
Not bad. What else we got?
On the offensive front, these are the offenses that they played. LSU, of course, top of the nation right now in points scored, which is the most. But the next thing is Clemson is the next best offensive team that they played this year, and they're 50th in points per game in the nation. Everybody else below Clemson. And then the last one.
Hold on. Let's stop right there. TJ, the court presents evidence A. You've played nobody, and the teams that you have played are bad. What say you, TJ?
They're doing what they should do against bad teams. And, you know, I can't redo Florida State's first 7 opponents to give everybody a top 10 offense. But in those games that you mentioned, the defense gave up a net 6 points against Southern Miss. They gave up 19 points against Boston College. That's the stinker. I'll give you that one. They gave up a net 17 points against Clemson, 10 points last week against Duke. The pick 6 is a touchdown that they gave up. 3 points against Syracuse. They gave up 10 points against Virginia Tech. So, yeah, those offenses stink, but Florida State's done what you're supposed to do against bad offenses, and they've held them down. Michigan gets a ton of credit, not for cheating, but for beating the heck out of bad teams right now, which is what they're doing. Yeah. Florida State's defense has played bad offenses, but it's not like they've been getting scored on against those offenses.
That's a solid point from Team FSU over there from TJ Pittinger. I got one for you, TJ. One of your best wins this past weekend against a really scrappy Dookie team. I mean, damn, y'all are in a tie football game. In that ball game at halftime, Riley Leonard goes out. It's the only reason I was told that you won that football game, man.
Riley Leonard had a nice 69 yards when he went out of that game. So it's hard for me to think that Riley Leonard is the reason they lost. Florida State went on a 21-0 run in the fourth quarter. I think they rely a lot on their depth, and they're okay wearing teams down because they know that they're a lot deeper than everyone else that they'll play, especially from here on out. In the regular season, the ACC championship. And so they're fine being in close games going to the fourth quarter. Riley Leonard wasn't going to stop Florida State from scoring every time they had the ball in the fourth quarter, which they did. So had Riley Leonard been in there and maybe been able to put up a few more points, maybe that game's a little closer. But again, I don't know that his 69 yards were really moving the needle that much anyway. Duke scored 10 points with Riley Leonard in. They got 7 points off of a pick 6, a tipped pass. So I don't know. I don't know if Riley Leonard, maybe we don't win by 18, but I don't think they're winning that game either.
Boys, I think we got a worthy opponent here, Mr. Pittinger. No he's schooling us right now. What do you got?
So I guess mine's not as much of a criticism as it is a question. What about this team makes you think that they'll be able to win if you go against a team that can lock up your receivers? Because I feel like a lot of times you get in third down situations.
They are kind of one-dimensional.
Kind of just throw it up to Johnny Wilson or whoever else can make a catch. Keon Coleman. What happens, like in the Clemson game, you saw that where sometimes
Duke
they cover
as well
those.
At times.
Yeah, so my question is, like, what about it other than if you find a team that can do that, how are you going to win games?
So I don't know, and this is no shot at UGA because I think they'll probably have the best chance of doing that, of anyone in the country. But I don't know that anybody's just going to shut down Florida State's wide receivers. I don't know that you shut down 6'7" and Keon Coleman, who may be wide receiver 2 right now in the country. I don't know that you shut that down. So what do you do if you run into a team that can limit that or – there are some teams out there that could probably do a much better job than others. But Clemson did play it really, really, really well. And as much as we'll give Clemson's offense crap, I mean, that's still a top 10 defense on the road in Death Valley. And Florida State still found a way to move the ball enough to win, right? Enough to, get to overtime and find a way. So, first of all, who is that defense that's really going to be able to shut it down? Again, I don't know that it exists. There are teams that are better than Clemson defensively that can certainly limit it more. But yeah, Florida State's still going to throw up jump balls to 6'7" and 6'4" and say, yeah, you might limit it, but you're not going to stop it completely.
He is right in the sense that I think the best and like the most NFL worthy corner that they've played all year, they will play all year. They've already played Nate Wiggins. Would you agree, TJ?
Yeah, I think so. And he got hurt late, and that kind of made things a little bit easier for Florida State in overtime and late in the game.
Just hurting his own cause here in the court of law.
I was mopping it up the floor, so I wanted to give you guys a little help.
Dude, I like this segment. We've never done anything like this. Just invite an expert on and just try to shit on his football team.
Yeah, I like it too, man. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm going to start doing it to other people.
Do we have any more?
No.
We got to have something. All right, I got one for you. I don't question Jordan Travis's ability to be elite from a college football quarterback standpoint. I think he's a really, really good college quarterback. Adds into the run game, adds a little bit of spice and creativity to what Norvell does as an offense in that run game. Obviously, his deep ball accuracy has improved throughout his career. However, I do think he is limited from a top-end ceiling standpoint as a quarterback. If we were to just mark him up with some of the physical football players that he might have to go up against, maybe in January, for example, like a J.J. McCarthy, I don't think he's as physically gifted as a McCarthy. Even like a Carson Beck, I don't think he's as NFL traitsy as a potential quarterback like Carson Beck that he might see down the road. And then just the overall passing attack that a team like Ohio State can bring at you, I don't think necessarily Jordan Travis presents that type of threat. What say you about the idea that, hey, maybe Jordan Travis has a stinker somewhere down the road, TJ?
Yeah, I think if anybody gets into the playoff or, their conference championship, so like your last 3 games of the year and has a stinker, then, you're in pretty big trouble, right? And so, yeah, Jordan Travis probably isn't as physically imposing as some of those guys you've mentioned, but I really, really like the weapons that are around him. And again, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, the running attack. I also really, really like Mike Norvell's ability to scheme. And I think he consistently puts guys in the right position to be in games that they shouldn't be in. I don't think Brian Kelly's an elite coach. I think he's a very good coach, but I think he's outcoached a team that's more talented than Florida State 3 straight years in beating LSU twice. And then as a double-digit underdog, taking Notre Dame in 2021 to overtime. And I think that's what Norvell's that's what he excels at. And so I think the coaching side of things, him being an offensive guy, putting guys in the right position, really has a lot to do with where Florida State's success is. And it really is that, you're so cliche saying it, but it really is that team aspect, that team mentality where it's not all on Jordan's shoulders. There's a lot around him that makes Florida State pretty successful offensively.
This is actually helping your case here, but looking at them giving up 24 total points to LSU to start the season, knowing what we know about that offense, but most importantly, they only gave up 7 points in the second half as a whole. That performance against that LSU defense. Now, historically, Brian Kelly football teams offensively had kind of started slow, but they had no excuses. They had a bunch of returning weapons at the wide receiver position, a veteran quarterback coming back in Jaden Daniels, and that Florida State unit put him in a box. Hey, TJ, what did they do to limit LSU that other teams just haven't been able to do? Because I think now, with Washington having struggled last week, I think LSU has the argument for the best offense in the sport. So what did Florida State do, just aside from the jokes in the courtroom? I think you won the battle. I think, are we conceding here, boys?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I got 2 more for you. I got 2 bullets in the gun. But let's ask about this. What did you guys do to successfully limit that LSU offense that's been unstoppable this year?
I think they played bend don't break, right? And they really bowed up. LSU could have had 2 more touchdowns. And if they go to the half with a 14 or 17 point lead or even 13, maybe that looks different down the stretch. But they were not afraid to let LSU kind of nickel and dime down the field. And then when they got into the red zone, they got into the scoring zone, they really did a good job of bowing up. In the second half, the defensive line got after it. And again, I think that's where the depth got into it. And Florida State made the right plays at the right time, whether it was an interception or Jared Verse going off for a sack or this, that, and the other. They did a really good job with depth in the second half. First half, I think they were willing to let LSU drive and say that, hey, you're not going to get all the way into the end zone. So they forced a couple of fourth down misses. They forced a field goal, kept it close for a half, and then kind of let their depth take over. They rotate a ton on the defensive line, and that helped too.
All right, we got 2 final bullets in the chamber. If we can't get you here, we ain't getting you. What do you got?
My question just kind of goes all around the schedule because LSU is probably the closest thing that Florida State has played to a college football playoff opponent, at least from an offensive standpoint. Duke, great football team, not necessarily there offensively. And then I just look at the rest of the schedule, Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, Miami, which look great to start with, maybe not so much now, North Alabama, and then Florida. Is there maybe this concern that because the schedule has been up to par that maybe they kind of just go through the schedule, but then when it comes up to college football playoff, like maybe the ends don't meet finally. Maybe they find someone that can beat them offensively or defensively, because this is something that we have seen from the ACC do and even other opponents in college football where they have maybe this subpar schedule and they look fantastic doing so. They're still winning football games, but then when it comes to crunch time, the college football playoff, they necessarily don't deliver what everybody thought they would.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't think there's because your schedule was poor, you are automatically at a disadvantage for that. I'm going back 10 years on you now, but that was the talking point when 2013 and Jameis Winston got to play Auburn in the national championship. Well, Auburn's battle tested and they've been through this team and they've been through that. And who has Florida State played all year? And that was a good game. Don't get me wrong, but it was Florida State when the pedal met the rubber, right? Like whatever cliche you want to use, that's not even a good one. They were there and they were ready to go. So I don't think having a bad schedule necessarily, precludes you from finding a way to win. But you are right. And at the end of the day, Florida State's offenses that they've played aren't very good. I mean, there's a chance they'd see North Carolina. I think Miami's offense has some pretty potent weapons. I just don't think they're a full offense just yet. But they look good at times. So if Van Dyke's healthy, that'll be one that you kind of, don't want to see a ton out of. You'd like to see them kind of stay down. But if they played UNC, I think in Charlotte, that would certainly get them ready. And if UNC wins out, they're into Charlotte. So we'll see on that one. But, yeah, I don't think getting there and who they've played in the past is really – I don't know. It means way less than the matchups once that game or playoff happens.
You left out that 2014 season when talking about kind of teams that didn't matter that you didn't really play anymore.
Which brings me to my final point.
Wait, can I do that one? Can I answer that 2014?
No, because you're about to have to answer for the whole conference. That ACC be serving up some mid, TJ. Every year we got a letdown in the daggum college football playoff. And you know who the culprits are? The Pac-12. I'm looking at you, Washington, okay, and the ACC. And I'm looking at you, Notre Dame, who might as well be your ugly step-cousin out there at the ACC. So if it ain't Deshaun Watson walking through that door, and if it ain't Trevor Lawrence walking through that door, this conference serves us up some mid, TJ Pittinger.
Who doesn't, though, outside of the SEC? Ohio State's gotten blown out 31-0. The Big 12 is never good. They had the one good game against Georgia. Yeah, so I'll give them that. Nobody is consistent in the playoff, though. And I'll dare to say that the team that's been the most consistent in the playoff is actually Clemson. And then Ohio State's probably right behind them. So, yeah, the ACC in general is mid, but so is everyone else. The Pac-12 is undoubtedly the worst. Then the Big 12. Then it's a fight between – who's worse between the ACC and Big Ten. And so the Big Ten usually has two good teams going back and forth, but I don't know, half of that's got a shadow cast on it now with Michigan. So who even knows with last year? So I don't know. I think that, yeah, the ACC's not been good, but has anybody outside of the SEC once it gets playoff time?
No. Georgia's 5-1.
Yeah, Georgia and Alabama. Bama lost.
Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson are probably the only teams with a winning record in the college football playoff.
Probably.
LSU, good call.
Yeah.
Been in there once and swept it. So, yeah, LSU with an undefeated record in the college football playoff. Probably the only ones with that, right? Only ones in the college football playoff with the undefeated record. All right, the other question I got for you, TJ, is what are the odds that Florida State falls victim to something that the ACC's felt victim to the last 2 weeks? Pitt sneaks up on Louisville 2 weeks ago. UNC takes an L to Virginia last week at home, and then this week you guys are on the road. Ugly Winston-Salem noon kicker. What are the odds that Florida State just doesn't show up this weekend?
I think pretty low. Yeah. I think that Wake's trying to. I think they're second string quarterback. So like they played three quarterbacks in the last 2 weeks. Ton of injuries. They're just not the same team. Obviously losing Hartman was big, but they also lost like 10 or 12 like super COVID seniors or whatever. And so they're just not the same team. It took a miracle where Pitt slid early for them to not beat Pitt. And Pitt's terrible too. So I think it would really – Florida State could, I think, play like a C+ game and probably still win this thing by 10 points, 14 points. They're just so physically imposing on both sides of the line of scrimmage compared to Pitt. I don't think Florida State has an elite offensive line compared to college football, but compared to what compared to what Wake has, I just don't think they have enough to stay in it. So we'll see. I could see them tripping up against Miami or Florida because of the rivalry. I'd be pretty shocked if they slipped up here to Wake or even Pitt next weekend.
I think Jay Will's going to make one more run at you. What do you got, Jay Will?
Oh, no, I wasn't going to make a run at you. I was just going to ask a question because Kirk Herbstreit made this tweet this week about Wake Forest, kind of saying it's like a sleepy environment. They're a good football team, contrary to belief, and that they're typically this team that can sneak up on people. Is that your belief, too, as someone that is in the ACC and commonly sees Wake Forest?
Wake Forest is on a 3-game winning streak against Florida State right now, so maybe I shouldn't talk so much smack. But again, they did that with Sam Hartman. They've done that when Florida State's been really down, right? And so I guess I kind of see what he's saying about like the sleepy nooner and stuff, but man, as a 21-point road favorite, I'm not saying they definitely cover the spread or they're my lock of the week or anything like that, but they are so much more talented than Wake is this year. Even last year, Wake had some beasts out at wide receiver. Sam Hartman, a really good defense. They run that annoying mesh that nobody likes. Yeah. So I think they're also very well coached. I think Clawson's a great coach. And, if Wake can find a little bit more success, he'll probably get snatched up from somebody. So I think they're just such a bad team this year. And so that's kind of what I hate to sound so cocky with it, but Florida State also had their like crap game against BC and nearly lost. And I think that was their wake-up call, right? Like you kind of get your one, like, oh, man, all right, let's not do this again. It was a nooner. You got to realize it going out this week, that similar type situation, how do you compensate for it? How do you get better? So, yeah, I saw Kirk's comments. The last time they put again, I'll go back 10 years ago because that's the trendy thing to do with this year's team. But they put Florida State on upset alert on College Game Day against Maryland in 2013, and the Seminoles won 63-0. So I'm not saying that happens, but like whenever Kirk puts us on upset alert, the fans are super happy with that.
TJ, one question I got for you, and it's not just relative to Florida State football. I think it's relative to this sport as a whole. It was very, very important that Florida State's boosters, administration, and particularly fan base remain patient with Mike Norvell. Okay, I don't know what he did to earn it, but it's a good thing that he got it because it took a while. It wasn't this immediate success. I think he's going to be one of the football coaches that defies our year 3 principle here on this network. It's year 4 for him, is it not, at Florida State?
No.
So this is a guy that is kind of defying what we normally think of in terms of college football where, if you're not making or winning your conference in year 3, it's probably not going to be there. Luckily, he showed signs of it. But I guess what was the key to the patience of the fan base, and was it always patient? Because I'm going to believe it wasn't.
Yeah, it was tough. Well, coming off of Taggart, then we go into – you come off of Willie Taggart, and then you go into the COVID year. And I think the COVID year bought him a little bit extra time. And everyone had to deal with COVID, but not everyone had to take over like a top 15-ish all-time program that had just been run into the dirt while COVID was going on. And so he didn't get to meet with his players until like 3 months into the job. He did, it was like he didn't get to recruit on campus for like 6 months into the job. So like, I don't know. I think that bought him a little time. And they obviously started out really poorly. They went 3-10 in his first 13 games. But then they started to see signs of improvement. And that was the biggest thing with Taggart was things were declining and getting worse and worse and worse. And just like Florida, right? Like Florida's seeing some signs of improvement, not holistically, not all the way across the board, but like there are some reasons for optimism or hope with where Napier is. I mean, right now 5-2. I mean, shoot, they should be thrilled with that. Their over under in Vegas was 5.5. So Florida State went 5-3 down the stretch of that year too. And those 3 losses, they were underdogs in all 3 of the games, 2 of them by double digits. And they competed in each one of them. They barely lost to Clemson. They barely lost on the road at Florida. Not that they were a great team, but they did a good job, and there were reasons for optimism. And then I think going into year 3, that was the big question year, and they beat LSU. They beat LSU to start the year, and everyone said, oh, okay, well, we might have something here. If we can beat LSU, we can beat anybody else on the schedule. And that year, that end of year 2, beginning of year 3 really is what kind of turned everyone's minds around. And they were like, hey, wait a minute. We might have a guy that knows what he's doing here.
All right, so NIL is legal, so I can ask you this question without feeling like I'm throwing any allegations on the program. As a person who's been around college football forever, Florida State was always a football school that was nationally known, right? Historically great. But people who knew football knew that what Bobby Bowden did there was not only transcendent, but was a first and one of a kind, because historically that was not a football school. That was not a football or a university that invested a lot of money into athletics. And even during Jimbo's time, most of the reason in bitching and moaning and complaining that he did was because resources weren't there, facilities weren't great. This arms race, they weren't able to compete for. Now, I'm a director of recruiting for SI and Fan Nation, so I'm very well versed in recruiting. And I'm going to tell you right now, since NIL has been enacted, there's a ball player down there in Florida State and Tallahassee that's out here playing ball and playing ball actively. So where did this money come from, TJ? Because it's here now, if I'm not mistaken. It is here on the recruiting trail. Florida State is a player.
Yeah, I was chatting with somebody about this. I think that Florida State has always done more with less, and they've always had to be strategic. You know, they started football like 50 years after the University of Florida, and they have the same number of national championships, the same number of Heismans. Since Bowden got there, they have a winning record against Florida. Now, you can go back to Florida fans, and they're excited about their wins in the 50s and 60s, and I get that. That's fine. But since Bowden came around, they've been every bit the program that Florida had. I mean, it's been the same program essentially, right? Like they have the same level of success, but they've always done that with less resources, and they're continuing to do that now. You look at the TV contracts and all this talk about conference realignment and everything else, and Florida's donor base is so much bigger than Florida State's, and it's a bigger university, so they're literally they're growing their base as well. And so as far as the money with NIL, I think there are people who were always kind of there lurking in the shadows, but didn't necessarily, for whatever reason, feel like just giving to the Sentinel boosters or giving to the organization was the most effective, best use of their money. And so they were just kind of sitting there. And so I think some of those people are very invested in football, very conscientious of wanting football to be good. And so they've done a really good job of stepping up to the plate and making that happen with the Battle's End. I also think Dave Clawson, I put a video out on this today. Dave Clawson said, not only does Florida State have a top NIL program in the country, they're also smarter and more strategic than everybody else when they are, I don't know, lack of better words, buying players, getting Jordan Travis back, getting Jared Verse back, getting Trey Benson back, getting Johnny Wilson to not go to the draft. I think there's a lot of strategic happenings that have gone into it as well.
You got to allocate your salary cap properly. It's as simple as that. We have entered into a salary cap sport in the sense that there is a cap, a hard cap on how much boosters are willing to pay. And that cap will be directly influenced by the success on the field. So what you're seeing at Florida State right now is obvious. Mike Norvell has convinced a booster base, finally, for the first time in like 10 or 15 years, that, hey, this is something that we can get results out of if we invest in, because we finally got a coach that can actually coach some football. He is TJ Pittinger. He has been obviously our best guest here on the National Hour. He absolutely lit the airways up. TJ, tell the folks how they can find you, please, sir.
Yeah, double fries, no slaw. It's a little ode to Guthrie's, which my contact there was actually Big Bulldog. He was born and raised in Athens. So shout out to you guys. And you guys have a Guthrie's there. So double fries, no slaw everywhere, mostly on YouTube. So come check us out.
Hey, I appreciate you for joining us, TJ. We'll be talking soon, brother.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, man. He absolutely cooked our ass.
Yeah, we were giving him some softballs, man. He was knocking them out of the park.
I mean,
didn't stutter, didn't pause, nothing.
No, dude. Didn't prepare him for nothing. Didn't give him no tips, no tricks, no trades.
He was good,
and he
man.
came in here and lit our ass up on our own show. Shouts out to TJ Pittinger. Let's go ahead and give him 3. Hey, I want to go ahead and give you guys 3. Let's give them 3. This has been by far our best hour or consecutive hours here on Nothing But Rants, our national hour. If you have found us this week, whether it be because of our takes on Twitter, whether it be because of our takes on Michigan, or whether it be because our boy TJ Pittinger just joined us, or whether it be because you came to watch RJ, Richard Johnson, join us. First of all, thanks to those guys for coming on here. Second of all, make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're sticking around, because we are just getting started here on the Film Guy Network. For Brooks Austin, for my boy Jay Will and Curb, we'll see you next week.